Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 4, Text 34, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yeah, say that. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanena sattvadarshinaha. Yeah, just you can read it all in Tamil. Everyone understands Tamil. Srila Prabhupada would either personally or more often have one of his disciples speak before an initiation ceremony on the topic of the meaning of initiation, what it means to be a disciple, and so on. Now, all these topics are subsumed under the heading Guru Tattva. This is a vast subject. I'll just speak on some aspects of it now. The three behavioral factors, the things that one should do in approaching a guru, are mentioned here. Pranipat is translated here, pranipatena, by approaching a spiritual master. The approach, as Srila Prabhupada incorporates into his translation, that should be submissive. There is one word which we find in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and in subsequent Gauriya writings, which is often used in, at least in Bengali discussions about what it means to be a devotee. That word is anugata, which that's the verbal form, and anugatya is the noun form. It means following. Anu means following, and gatya means going. So the whole idea is that one should become a follower. One is supposed to be a follower, and a disciple means to take a lowly position. Describing the role of a brahmachari disciple, Narad Muni says, Brahmachari Guru Kule Vasan Danto Gurur Hitan. What's the next line? Acharan dasavani cho guru sud sohrida sohridam. The meaning is that the brahmachari lives in the Gurukul, sudura sohridam. The brahmachari lives in the Gurukul, controlling his senses, acting for the benefit of the Guru. It means giving up selfishness and understanding that his own self-interest lies in satisfying his Guru. He should act as a menial servant, which Srila Prabhupada writes here, and with an attitude of firm friendship toward his Guru. This goes completely against the idea of trying to become important and promoting oneself. This attitude of trying to promote oneself and make oneself very big is the cause of our material bondage. Ishvaro ham, I am the boss. Thinking like this is the demoniac attitude. It's nothing new. It's existed since time immemorial. It is the cause of our bondage since time immemorial. We are to become free from this if we are to enter into our eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. And the system that Krishna has given to become free from this attitude of self-promotion and pride is to submit oneself to a spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada, he established the convention with his disciples that whenever they came into or left his presence, they should bow down. Once in 1968 in Seattle, America, after a lecture, a visitor challenged Srila Prabhupada. Seeing the disciples bowing down to him, he said, I don't see why I should bow down or anyone should bow down. Srila Prabhupada forcefully replied that if you do not voluntarily bow down to the Guru, then you will be forced to bow down. You will fall down into death and into lower species of life. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was often visited by the Maharaj of Bardhaman, which was in West Bengal, who related the following, that one time he thought to himself, I'm the highly respected, well-known Maharaj of Bardhaman. So when I go to visit Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, as the custom, I bow down, but why should I bow down? So he thought to himself that next time I go to visit him, I won't bow down. And I'll see how he responds to this breach of etiquette. So he related the next time he went to see him, he thought, okay, I'm not going to bow down. So he entered the room, and then he described that his head just went down to the floor. It was even without his desire, he was just in the presence of such a towering spiritual personality, he was as if forced to put his head on the floor. I also read one narration about the Chandrasekharendran Saraswati, the former Kanchi Shankaracharya. So we don't follow his philosophy, but he was undoubtedly a very pure sadhu. In his activities, not his philosophy. So there's one narration how one man who was one of his admirers or followers, he brought with him a relative of his who was an atheist who blasphemed sadhus. This man was a drunkard, he ate meat, he was an atheist, and he didn't like that he was being dragged to see this sadhu. And he thought when he saw him, he'll tell him, you're just bogus, all you sadhus are bogus. He was going to insult him. So he came into his presence in an angry mood, and then just on seeing him for a moment, he fell on the ground, crying like a child. He could realize that coming in the presence of such a pure person, he could realize how sinful he himself was. So this system of bowing down to the Guru, that is the required culture. Once I was sitting in front of our ISKCON temple in Baroda, and some small meeting had been called just for televising with myself and some other members of ISKCON and some Muslims and Sikhs and some kind of interfaith gathering, so to speak. The day before, there had been Jagannath Rath Yatra in Baroda, and the devotees from Bombay who came to do the TV shooting were very impressed that some Muslims, leaders of the Muslim community, had also come onto the Rath and garlanded Jagannath. So the next day there was an impromptu meeting called, and we were all discussing, and then again impromptu, one of my disciples came before me and offered obeisance, at which one of the Muslims who was present, who was generally being friendly, he said, well, we find this objectionable. He said that we find this objectionable to bow down before anyone except Allah. So he found that objectionable, sacrilegious. That means against, just opposite to dharma, practically like ninda. And the person in America in 1968 who protested to Srila Prabhupada, he objected on different grounds. His objection was that we're all equal, this is democratic, why should anyone submit himself to anyone else? To the Western mentality, it appears to be something very wrong that one person should submit themselves to someone else. I'm sometimes asked by devotees in the West that when we see a sannyasi in a public place, just like if we meet them in the airport, should we offer obeisance or not? Because people may find it very unusual and maybe objectionable. So my response is, do it. Let them get used to it. We plan on being around for a long time in the Western world, so let them get used to us. Not that we have to adjust everything to them. If they have any objection, then we can explain to them. I was saying that Muslims, they find this objectionable. Once I arrived in Los Angeles airport, and devotees greeted me with garlands, kirtan, bowing down, and one man looked like a businessman in suit and tie and looked like an Indian. He was smiling in appreciation. So I presumed he was Indian, and I started speaking to him in Hindi. He said, I don't understand that language, I'm from Iran. So it's not that, there may be a Oh, I'll give another example. I always used to see in Bangladesh that among Muslims also, the juniors will always touch the feet of the elders. So that is part of culture. Even some Muslims will accept that. So this idea that you shouldn't bow down to anyone, only to God, many Christians, they will say that also. But God Himself says, Acharyang mang vijaniyam navamanyeta karhi chitna martya buddhya suyeta sarvadeva mayo guru. He says that you should know the guru, to the acharya, to be me, and not disrespect him in any way. Not think of him as a mortal person. One should not be envious of him, and one should know that he is the representative of all the demigods, all the devotees, all the previous devotees. So we should bow down before God, but according to God, Krishna, we should treat the Guru as God. Now the objection that, well, why bow down? That means you're just weak. You're showing you're weak before someone else. But actually, to bow down is a symptom of strength. The strength to admit that I am weak. To pretend to be strong does not mean that one is strong. And if one admits that one is weak and takes shelter of the strong, then he becomes protected. Just as Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a small child, if he's walking with his father, he's completely confident. He doesn't, but as soon as he's out of the company of his father, he feels very disturbed. Another example that Srila Prabhupada gave is from Ramcharitmanas, that the mighty elephants are swept away by the force of a raging river. But the little fish is quite happy because it takes shelter of the water. So if we try to show we are strong, when actually we're weak, then we are swept away. But if we admit we are weak and we take shelter, then we are carried along. Miche mayar boshe jacho beshe kacho habu dubu bhai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that under the power, under the control of this illusion, Maya, we are getting drowned, and we're sometimes coming up, breathing some air, thrown underneath the wave. We're just controlled. Then Jeev Krishna Das Ebishas Korle Ta Ar Dukhanai. If we simply accept that I am an infinitesimal jiva, the servant of Krishna, then we have no more problems. Same example, if we try to swim as humans, if we try to swim upstream, it's very difficult. But if we go with the current, then we can go very fast. So if we take shelter of Krishna, we're carried along by Krishna. That taking shelter is anugatya, by the parampara system, following the parampara. And if we admit our weakness and take shelter of Krishna, then Krishna gives us strength. Today is the appearance anniversary of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. He is Balaram. Balaram is the giver of spiritual strength. So he is also the original Guru. If we take Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the Swayam Bhagavan Krishna Ekaleshwa. And Balaram is his first expansion. So Balaram is the first one to say, look, that's Krishna, you have to surrender to him. And Balaram gives spiritual strength, so he's the first Guru. He's the personage of the Guru Tattva, principle of Guru. So if we surrender to Guru, admit our weakness, then we are infused with strength. That power comes through from Krishna, through Balaram, through the chain of disciplic succession. But to get that strength, we have to understand that we are not independent. If we admit our dependence, then we become useful, we become powerful within our capacity. We get strength according to our capacity, not that we become as strong as Krishna. Another example that Srila Prabhupada gave is that there may be a small part of a machine. If it's in the machine, then it executes its function. If it's outside like a screw, if it's outside the machine, it's completely insignificant. So when we admit that we are part of the whole, part of all the different living beings who are meant to serve Krishna, then we fulfill our proper function of serving Krishna. But if we want to be independent, then we become useless. A screw, if it's not screwed into anything, then it's just useless. It has no function to perform. So approaching a guru, bowing down, means to give up our sense of independence, to become submissive, to sacrifice what we mistake to be our own self-interest. So disciple means that they have to have these qualities: submissiveness, dedication. Obviously there has to be faith in Guru, otherwise how can you dedicate like that? So that faith comes by observing the qualities of the Guru. Tad vijnanartam sagurum eva bigechet shotriyang brahmanishtam samitpani shotriyang brahmanishtam. That's described. One should approach a guru for the sake of getting spiritual understanding. It's not that one should approach a guru so that one can solve one's financial problems or for any mundane reason. When one at least has some understanding that this world is completely useless and wants to be free from the suffering of this material world and wants to revive his original blissful spiritual existence, then tadvijnanatam, for the sake of that knowledge, one should approach a guru. Samit parni, this means that one should carry in hand wood for the sacrifice. So the idea is that one should be willing to bring something, offer something, not just that you want to bring something. Once, many years ago in Australia, one young brahmachari he asked me many questions, after which he said, well, I thank you for the opportunity to pick your brain. It would be difficult to explain the feeling that goes with that phrase, prick your brain. It means just that it's like milking a cow. You just get something. You get something without just how you can get something for your own advantage. It's the wrong attitude. So that is not the attitude. One should be willing to give. Pranar artha dhyavachas. One should give one's whole life, all one's energy. Artha means one should give one some money, or it can mean that one makes the very meaning of one's life this: one's intelligence, one's words. What is that? Sarvartha parpanam guru. One should offer everything to the guru. And then why should have one's faith to dedicate so much? That faith is there because it is seen, Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam, that the Guru knows the purpose of life as described in the Vedic Shastra and is fixed in spiritual consciousness. So one who wants to know the purpose of life according to the Vedic scripture and who wants to be fixed in spiritual consciousness must approach a person who is on that status himself. One has to submit oneself. There's no alternative. You can't just pick the brain. As Srila Prabhupada writes here, it's not simply by independent study of books that one can make spiritual advancement. One disciple means he has to accept the discipline. Shishya means he accepts the shashan. It's not that one can just be whimsical and do whatever one likes. Again, many people would, especially in the Western world, they would protest. How can you give up your freedom like this? But unless one is prepared to accept this training and this discipline, then one will go on with one's imaginary freedom when in fact we are simply controlled by our mind and senses. Ahankara vimurhatma kartaham iti manyate. Big fool being guided by, impelled by ahankar, egoism, false egoism, thinks I'm doing everything. So to understand one's own insignificance, one has to submit oneself to a guru. A guru, while accepting respect on the level of God, he is authorized to do so because he has understood his own position in relationship to Krishna, which is ontologically insignificant. So we have to act under the direction of Guru. Now this knowledge is available in many books, but in the very book that Srila Prabhupada made the first of his major books in the Krishna conscious movement, is Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada stresses That's not simply by independent study of books that one can make proper spiritual advancement. So for purification, one has to submit oneself to a guru. And tad-vijnanartam, one is supposed to learn from the guru. So we may think, well, we have all the books, so we can just learn by self-study. But that is not the system. Srila Prabhupada's books are there and everyone can read them, but nevertheless there are various interpretations and approaches to those books. So one has to hear from devotees, one has to hear from Guru how to understand Srila Prabhupada. Otherwise you may find someone on the strength of Srila Prabhupada's books, they say that homosexuality is okay, for instance. You may find someone who says that, well, demigod worship is okay, in the name of Prabhupada. But if you read the Guru should actually be in line with what Srila Prabhupada says. So I request my disciples to study Srila Prabhupada's books, to hear his lectures, and you should hear my lectures also. A few of them are available with Tamil translation now. And some of Srila Prabhupada's lectures in English are also available with Tamil dubbing, and some other Tamil lectures are available with CDs. Do you have them here? You have your one, Sri Girihari's. Hearing is very important. Hearing is very important. Haren nama eva kevalam, kalonasteva gatir anyata. But we see that those who chant but they don't hear, then they don't understand and they don't make proper advancement. So here are some points. It's a big subject. We'll finish there now. Hare Krishna.